Welcome back to the Sports Medicine Project. Kelly and Blake here, taking you through part 2. Why are you looking at me like that?
No, you go. You go.
Of our conversation with Ian Griffiths.
Yes. Yeah, part 2. And yeah, I think we talked for around 90 minutes. So there's a whole nother part to do. Yeah, that was recording, not to mention the offline part, which is another hour. So we recorded for a very long time. So lots of learning, lots of education, lots of good little clinical analogies. They're my favourite thing to get from podcasts and other people. So we've got one coming out soon with the Foot Collective, and I just wanted to I guess speak about one of the analogies that he gave me and Justin. I don't think I've actually spoke to you about this, where he was talking about supplements that we take every day, iron, vitamin D, that kind of thing. Oh, the guy from the Foot Collective, Nick. Oh. So, when we think of supplements that we get from our diet, he talks about having and needing supplements when you're obviously deficient in something, but then he relates that to movement. So it's like if you're not doing any plyometric movement and strength training, that you've got to try and supplement it somewhere else. So he was saying rather than taking supplements, you should get exposure to all different foods and varieties so you're not deficient in anything. And that's how he was talking about movement, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like that. That's
cool. It's a good analogy. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. So you might be deficient in something at the moment, but we're going to supplement it with some explosive stuff or some strength training. I thought that was pretty cool.
I'm deficient in strength training at the moment.
No, you're pretty strong. You are pretty strong. You're going to join Air Locker, hey, aren't you?
I'm just going to try and spice up my gym routine because I'm bored and
I
just don't go. I don't do it.
What was that thing that they said? I saw it was on their website. Burn 300% more calories, reduce our risk of injury. Didn't see any studies in there. I just saw them quote it. I'm going to do a really dive on that because that's... I don't waste my time doing that
stuff. I need a group setting, I think, after Queenstown. I'm just bored of going to the gym.
Yeah, that's a fair call, but it's good for you. We were talking with Michael Nishke about this, about strength training for runners, and it's questionable, and I completely get... I guess it was a good conversation because it made me think, and I've been thinking about it for the last couple of months. I'm a little bit less thinking that they do need it, but I think it's really beneficial. But I can also see the other way where, if you're running hills or if you're running, you're getting the strength in running because you're doing the activity. Yeah. And I guess if you have the right load progression or graded exposure, perhaps you build that resiliency over time with running rather than having to go to the gym. I've
been thinking about that a bit too, actually. And I've been thinking a little bit the opposite. I just don't think... I think hill running is really good for being a good runner, but I don't think it's strength. I wouldn't call it strength.
And wait, we should clarify. He definitely wasn't saying not to do it. He was just like, I don't know, and I completely agree. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later on, but people that you cannot be, and obviously listening to this podcast and this episode with Ian, he's so much in the sense of it depends, it's not black or white or it's grey, and when you hear people say you don't need this or you do need this, you've got to be a bit sceptical in health, because there's always a situation where, and you can always think of that weird and wonderful case where it's like, you don't need orthotics forever. It's like, actually there'll be some cases where people probably do benefit from them forever, and then it's like, well, all runners need strength training, and then there's cases where they never strength train and they're incredible runners with no injuries. So it's interesting.
It is interesting.
Highs and lows from this week.
So my highs... I had my low. I forget what it was. My high for the week... Well, my highs... Number one is that we're going on holidays tomorrow.
Yeah, that'll be good.
To New Zealand, and then running Queenstown Marathon on Saturday. So I'm excited.
That'll be good. What do you think? I'll question you on that. For people listening to this, and a lot of clinicians listen to this, do you think that it's better having? I know you like to have holidays roughly every 6 months, and I can see some people like to schedule it in once every 3 months. They'll have a week off, or one big holiday at the end of the year, or kind of two holidays every 6 months apart. Yeah, but it does. But it seems that as a human being, you need that consistent break.
I definitely do. This is my first holiday in 12 months. and I feel like I need it.
Yeah, that's true. But I wonder, like, I completely agree. It does definitely depend on the person. But I wonder if you can be somewhat not knowing that you need the holiday, where you're like, yeah, I could just work for 2 years straight. But it's like, if you had a holiday consistently every 3 months, you would probably feel a lot better and a lot more engaged with work. I wonder, what would you recommend if you had 5 people working for you? Not to say you would make them take their holidays, but would you talk about having consistent breaks? I think
so.
Yeah.
I think at least every 12 months, but preferably every 6 months.
Yeah.
I just know that I reckon at the 6 month mark for me is when I start to, I don't know, and I hate to say this out loud, but I get frustrated at things that I shouldn't get frustrated at, sometimes in the clinic even, which is totally unfair and totally a me thing.
Yeah, but you're a human.
I know, but I can feel that it's like the verge of burnout almost, and I recognise that it's because I haven't had a break.
Yeah. I wonder what the perfect way to work out what that is. I mean, based off someone's personality, maybe their previous history of holidays and things in the past, how they were brought up. Because I didn't go on many holidays when I was younger, but you went on lots of holidays. You were a big traveler. You've been to how many countries? Like 36?
Maybe.
Something like that. I've just been out bush a little bit. Maybe Newcastle, Sydney, but I didn't do a lot of holidaying, I guess. We've been to like Fiji and Vanuatu, but
I think you'd still need
the break. Yeah.
Break, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that was...
I think even just to get out of routine is healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. It sucks getting back into routine.
I must say, it's been hard work this last week preparing for going on leave for 2 weeks. Like, every person that I see, I have to write a big handover for.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like the ones that at least I'm handing over to another clinician to see while I'm away. Yeah. It does take a lot of, like, it's a big effort to go away sometimes.
You poor thing.
Well, I know, but I'm serious. Like, it is. Like, you really have to factor that in. Like, this has been, right. And because it's a busy week, because you're like cramming everyone in to see before you go away, and then trying to write handovers for the people that need to be seen as well, it makes it a very action-packed week. But that was good. I feel like I was really productive this week. I got lots of notes and letters and saw lots of people and did all my programming and got my gym programs done like 2 months in advance to make sure that that's out of, not 2 months, a month. Make sure that's out of the way.
Great. Yeah. Anything else?
My other high was that Greg Lehman is coming to Australia next year.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Really keen. Newcastle specifically.
Yeah, if anyone's listening to this, please message us on the Instagram. You can come and stay with us and come to the Greg Lehman course in Newcastle. He's going to be in Newcastle. How good is that? That's incredible.
Come and stay in here.
Yeah, don't look at me like that. I want our podcast friends. I don't care who you are invited to this house. I'll send you the address. I'll post it on thing. Just come. That'll be awesome.
Just bring a mattress.
They can go to the lounge. They can go with us. They listen to this podcast. I'm happy to sleep in the same bed with them. We share. They're a part of our lives.
I think my low is just how bored of the gym I am.
Yeah, you are bored of the gym.
I'm really bored of the gym.
Cool.
I can't remember any other lows. I did have another one that I can't quite remember. But
does that make you then think of your patients that you give all your rehab and strength and conditioning for, and then you think, I can understand now why possibly they aren't as compliant because they don't enjoy it? I always say that, actually.
I often do. I say to patients, I hate the gym. Because I do. I've always...
You say that to patients?
Yeah. I say...
Wait, I'm going to question you on this.
I say...
So, I wonder...
Wait. Hear me out. I say, like, when they're like, I just don't like doing exercise. And I'm like, okay... Well, I don't like going to the gym. I love running. I don't like the gym, but I do it because I know it's good for me. And I do it consistently, at least once or twice a week.
I think you're projecting your biases onto the patient, because if they've
already told me that they don't like exercise and they don't want to do exercise because they don't like it, I'm relating to them. That's empathy, tactical empathy.
But you've already set them up, because if they're thinking, great, Kelly's giving me these exercises, she doesn't like to do them. Like, you're setting them up to then know and expect that they're not going to like to do them, because they could do them and enjoy them, or they could find a different motivator. It's people that
have already told me. I don't really say it to people that haven't, or maybe I do. I don't know. I don't think that that's... I don't think that that's...
Have you ever thought about it from their perspective, though? If you say that? Like, if I'm giving someone a shoe recommendation, I go, listen, I don't really like this hocker. I don't really wear my shoes around when I've got heel pain, but I need you to do it. I know it's annoying and I know it's frustrating. You're kind of setting them up a little bit. That's what I'm just questioning you on it. Because you want to become better clinicians.
I kind of think of it the opposite, because I think that patients often think, oh, you're like a young, fit person who likes to exercise, so you don't get where I'm coming from because you like exercise and I don't. So it's me trying to maybe get more in tune with where they're at by saying, no, sometimes I actually don't like this, but I still do it.
Okay.
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. Why have we been so nice to each other?
Do you see where I'm coming from?
No, I do see where I do see where you're coming from. Yeah,
You're trying to spark a little debate just to.
Well, I was just questioning you because Ian was saying that he loves the debate, and
No, I do. Maybe I'll think about that more actually.
You know, I would like to be questioned on things, and I know you would like to be questioned on things, and this is one of the reasons we started the podcast. So yeah, good.
What are your highs and lows?
Highs this week, lots of highs this week. I got my first pair, my only pair of the Vaporfly 2s. Alphafly 2s. They were great, very comfortable initially, but I got a little blister at the the distal part of my arch on my right foot. So I might put a little ergo blister pad in my shoe and see how that goes, but that was fun. I reckon
you should try Body Glide.
Yeah, I could give it a go.
Body Glide's so good.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend that. If a patient come to me and said, hey, I'm getting this irritation on this part of the shoe, that's exactly what I would do. Ergo, little blister pad, and then try and maybe change a bit of the lacing as well and see how that goes. But I'm thinking it's a new shoe and it's maybe, I don't know. I'm not getting on the other side, but yeah, I don't know what it is for, but I definitely think I can manage it pretty well. But I was excited about that because I never have any issues with blisters ever with shoes. And I see lots and lots of runners, trail runners, general population that get blisters and irritations and skin lesions and things like that. So it's really cool to actually see how it feels and then try and manage it myself, which will be awesome.
Honest question. How many pairs of shoes have you packed for our holiday?
I've got my trail shoes, my Nike Air Forces, Alphaflys, and Cloud Monsters, just for a bit of an easy run. But they were my highs. Don't want to talk about shoes too much. Other high was university this week. The students had their final exams and they all did incredibly well, which was great to see. It's really rewarding and makes me love it so much that you get to be with them and teach them and help them and go on this journey with them, and you see them at the end where you're testing them on all the stuff you went through for the last 12 weeks, and you know they've got the information, so you feel like you've helped them, or you've taught, or I guess helped them learn something, which is really, really fun.
Good job.
That was good. And busy week in the clinic. My low for the week was I saw a runner referral from a friend of mine, and it was one of my last patients, and I typically do this. I like to see runners kind of at the end of the day, so I know I can run over and spend lots of time with them. And I think I gave a lot of good information. It was a pretty straightforward condition that we've got a lot of research on and a lot of things that we could interpret and change, but I think that I got a little bit too excited and just gave way too much information and did a lot of explaining. We were in there for 90 minutes, which I was very happy to do because I love seeing people like this and helping people like this. But yeah, too much information, I think. I did get about halfway through the appointment, probably 3/4, and thought, this is too much information. I need to simplify it. And I just wrote up on the board, do's, wrote all these things out. I said, take a picture, rubbed it out, don't, all these things, take a picture, and then try to simplify a little bit there. Because there's lots and lots of things that you can do, and you want to do everything you possibly can. And this person had a specific goal in mind, a running goal. And yeah, that was interesting, but definitely need to work
sometimes
on that.
The slightly shorter appointments are useful because I find you're a little bit more concise. Do you think?
Well, I would have no trouble having an hour appointment, but it was just because I could run late, and I realised that I probably should have finished this 30 minutes ago. And it has been probably something that I've always struggled with, is not running over when I'm back to back. When I know I have time, I'm just like, great, I can take things slow and easy, which is fine, but I just end up giving way too much information. And we know, like, no matter how good the analogies are, no matter how slow you say it, no matter how perfect the delivery is, they're not going to take all the information in. Like, we know that from the research. What is it? They take 8%. I was going to say 8.8 and 11% of what you say. So I think pictures are best, and I really value doing that, even though my handwriting's horrible. But that was definitely...
I always laugh about that when you post like pictures up on the story of you writing stuff on the wall. It looks like a 5-year-old's written it.
Other high, tons of kids seeing this week as well, tons of severs, and a lot of people messaged into the podcast asking about why I don't see value in stretching, and I'm going to try and simplify it, but I want to do a whole episode dedicated to it, and hopefully, fingers crossed...
Haven't we already done an episode on stretching?
Oh, we're talking about severs management, but people are asking why, and we've got lots of new listeners and new followers, so maybe they haven't listened to it yet. But tractional apophysitis of the calcaneus is what we think severs is. I kind of think that the pain comes from the growth plate, and between the growth plate and the calcaneus, there's some cartilage in there. I seem to think that where they seem to be sore and where it comes. I don't know, because it relates to where their pain is. They generally don't have pain on the back of the insertion of the Achilles. It's usually through the growth plate, which is like 3/4 posteriorly to the...
Is there any research on that?
No, that's just what I think. So when you're thinking of the condition, if it's a tractional apophysitis of the calcaneus, stretching would only irritate the growth plate. And also, why would you give them stretching if you then know they're going to go out and use it? So you're basically flaring it up, theoretically, flaring it up, and then they're going to go out and use it. And then plus they're going to be jumping and playing basketball and soccer and all these things because they're stretching it anyway.
Stretching's a load though, right?
Yeah, so why do they
So
need...
is a calf raise. So what's the difference?
I don't know. Well, why does that question mean?
Well, like what's the difference between stretching it and doing a single leg calf raise off a step?
The single leg calf raise is a lot more load.
So wouldn't that irritate it more theoretically then?
I guess.
So
I don't give them calf raises.
Ah, okay.
Like, why are you asking me that? Yeah, I don't give them calf raises.
Really? Yeah. You don't think there's value in any sort of load, like it's just offloading?
Well, why do they need loading?
I don't know.
Do you give them calf raises?
I don't really see severs.
Well, I just don't think it... Like, what is that doing? Like, what do you... Like, it's not... They don't have an insertion. You're not trying to strengthen the Achilles. The Achilles isn't the issue. It's the growth plate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't get it from an inherent weakness, it seems.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
So, and I've spoken with Justin about this quite a lot, and I know we talked about it on the podcast, treating it, honestly, just like a plantar heel pain. Cuddling
like
it.
Like a
compressive, yeah. And I don't want to give all the secrets away, and I hope this isn't groundbreaking stuff, but treating it like plantar heel pain, I've found typically works pretty well. And one test I love to do, and I love to do this, I wonder if there's any parents listening to this, wouldn't that be funny? I get them out in the gym, I get them to walk on their heels, and it's always usually sore most of the time, and then come back in the clinic, do what I think it usually works best is, generally, it's not always heel lifts, but a really soft inner sole, if it's really flared up. If not, I'll just heel lifts and taping and compression soft, but soft inner sole, I'll tape it up in shoes, come back out in the gym, walk on your heels, and generally they don't have any discomfort, and it's like night and day difference. So it seems to work pretty well. But yeah, they can do stretching if it feels good, I guess. But I don't think they need it. Value, like you would give it. I know there's research to say it works, but it's stretching and heel lifts, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't actually seen someone with severs in a very long time, so really? I can't even remember what I would have done last time I saw them. Yeah.
I wonder if they come to podiatry a lot. You don't see that many kids, hey?
Not really. Not unless it's like following an acute injury. Ankle sprain or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Another actually high, I don't even think I told you this. I saw an acute syndesmosis. Did I tell you that? I don't know if I told you that. You
called me and you were asking something.
Yeah, I was, because I saw it and I was like, that was prior, and I was thinking to myself, because I never, and I've said that on the podcast with Dr. Kent, I was like, I never ever see them, ever. I never see the acute stuff, really, like acute ankle stuff, maybe acute foot stuff.
Wait, so did you make the diagnosis?
I suspected it, and I was like, you need to go and see Dr. Kent. Yeah, and ended up being positive.
Nice.
So it doesn't happen too often. I was just calling and I was like, you see them way more. And I don't know if people... I think when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have done that. I'll be able to understand it. It'll be fine. It's good for me to get it. But now I'm just like calling everyone in my network whenever I've got any questions, because you just get such a better idea about things. And I think you're incredibly knowledgeable on that. So I was like, hey, is this the right thing to do? And then I hung up on you because I was running 5 minutes late. But yeah, it was fine. But yeah,
I forgot to ask you about that.
But
talk about it later, though.
The reason for a high, I wouldn't have known that if we didn't do that podcast. So to see the value in myself, and I know other people are getting value from it because they're messaging in. So yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kent.
Yeah, that was a lot of highs this week. But yeah, going on holiday, that'll be good. Marathon next weekend, it'll be a cracker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything to say to our lovely listeners? Any bits of advice that you learned over the last couple of weeks? Anything I'm trying to think of anything you've told me. You know, you're a clinician listening to this, just something that they can do Monday morning. First patient, they can walk in and go, Kelly said this.
I think I don't know if this is good advice. I think get to work 30 minutes early.
Ooh, controversial. Yeah, I like it though.
Get to work 30 minutes early. Go through all of, just quickly have a read through all of your patients, like what your plan was. Mm-hmm. Go and make yourself a coffee, have a little sit, go and say good morning to everyone that's in the clinic.
Nice.
And
maybe a little fist bump.
Yep. And ask everyone how they had a good weekend, or if they look like they're busy, then just give them a quick morning. And then just have a little relax. Get to work, get ready, and don't get flustered first thing in the morning. Nothing worse than getting to work 5 minutes before your first patient and then just being flustered for the rest of the day. I always try and get to work early.
That's great advice. That is really good advice. I will only add, on Tuesday, get there 10 minutes before, 15 minutes before, and just compare, because I think you're on the money with this advice. Yeah. Just to see how much, if you feel more flustered. See how much
of a difference it makes.
Yeah. Alrighty, legends.
Challenge of the week.
Yeah. Physical challenge. Enjoy, have a lovely week, and enjoy this episode with Ian Griffiths. Interesting though, and I'm sure, seeing plantar heel pain compared to say an Achilles or a tib post or a peroneal, even giving it strength training in isolation, it typically doesn't respond like tendons and muscles do anyway. So it doesn't seem to be, and again, as you said, the research may change, but it doesn't seem to be the low-hanging fruit to add in. It's not what people are missing. It's more the cuddling and the offloading it tends to do a lot better with earlier on anyway. Not to say it doesn't need strength training later on, but earlier on it seems to be more the cuddling stuff.
I think it depends on what the patient is wanting. If the patient's wanting it, is that study based off pain or is it based off function? Because if they're wanting to return to some sort of functional activity, I think that's going to involve some sort of graded return to activity, which kind of may involve a version of strength training. Whereas if it's purely for pain, then I don't think that strength training is the answer to making it less painful. So.
Yeah, and let's be clear. If someone comes in and they're a runner, and they've got plantar heel pain, patellofemoral, it doesn't matter what they've got. If they come in and they're a runner, what you do to reduce their sensitivity may be one thing, but let's be honest, when you get them to end stage rehab, you're a runner, you should be doing strength work anyway. Let's be honest. Yeah. Even if not, we know that will benefit you as a human, as a runner, as someone in their 40s with sarcopenia setting in. The reality is just do it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It doesn't mean it's the golden goose for pain management. That said, I do see quite a few people that when they start doing it, just knowing that, moving, reducing some of that, reducing some of that hypervigilance, making them feel more robust, improving their self-efficacy, all of those things that we know exercise brings to the table. They're never bad things, but if they do it and then they suddenly get a flare up in their pain, then it can actually negatively feed into the fact that they feel fragile and broken and that something's damaged. So as you guys know, very well anyway, you just got to tread that tightrope a little bit.
Was that the review? Did it recommend Shockwave at 6 to 8 weeks post non-responding to any treatment? Was that a different review? When did it recommend to Shockwave to be brought in?
Pretty early actually, and it's one of those things where it was such a big part of our lives for so long, and then once it gets published, you just put it to the back of your head. So I can't remember off the top of my head. It's open. It's BJSM open access.
I'm just thinking. I do remember reading it.
It's earlier than I think most people think, and earlier than I think most people, when you speak to them, are actually doing.
Do you use it earlier on? Do you find with your patients?
We do tend to bring it in a bit earlier now than we did, for sure. I'm not saying day one. Day one, someone comes in, they're still getting taped, they're still getting, educated to within an inch of their life. We're still trying to draw out from them what is important and meaningful to them, and then trying to sort of mold what our management looks like around their values. So, if they've had if they've heard about it, if they're worried about it, if a friend of theirs had it and said it was agony, then we can't disregard those beliefs and those values. But yeah, we generally, on the whole, all other things being equal, tend to bring it in earlier now than we did, say, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. What way do you think foot orthoses work, and how do you
we're going straight there, are we?
Straight there. And how do you use them clinically? And if you could just answer it really simply in one sentence, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why not? It is that simple, isn't it? Yeah, straight into the big one. I was asked this in a job interview once.
Really?
I'll never forget. Yeah. And you're in a job interview and you want to give short, snappy answers. You want to try and show what you know, and out comes a question. You're like, this is like a PhD. Like,
how much time have you got?
This isn't an interview question. How do we think they work? What is their mechanism of effect? Here's the thing: like, we don't know. Let's be honest. Like, we just do not know for sure. I think that's the first thing to say. By what potential mechanisms may they be working? Potentially mechanical, i.e. modification, manipulation of kinematics, kinetics, to bunch those under the direct mechanical effects. So manipulation of mechanical metrics, the neuromotor effect. So you put something under the foot. We talk about putting something under the foot and having a mechanical effect. Well, the foot isn't just a triangle attached to the end of the leg. It's it's not just a slave to mechanical laws. It's attached to a human with a central nervous system. So that sometimes throws up funny things. So you look at work that showed feet pronated more on anti-pronation devices. Yeah. Doesn't matter how smart you are. There's no biomechanical explanation for that. That's a neuromotor effect. So yeah, mechanical, number one. Number two, neuromotor. Number three, psychological. And I don't just mean placebo, I mean contextual effects. And again, this is my current area of interest, my current area of personal research. And we don't have any answers here yet, but I just don't think we can disregard the fact that any intervention isn't having some kind of influence psychologically as well. When we look at other interventions that are similar to orthoses, in so much that they're debated a lot and they're considered passive and they have an equivocal evidence base. We look at things like acupuncture, kinesiotape, therapeutic ultrasound. 3 things that you say in a room of physios and you can just see the room just divide immediately. When you look at research that's been done into those, there's been shown to be huge influences on beliefs, expectations, the language used at time of delivery. I just don't see how orthoses can't be privy to that as well. And then fourth possibility is some other mechanism by which we have not yet identified. Let's never assume, mechanical, neuromotor, psychological, feel like the big 3. And then there's some other. And the crazy thing is, of course, for each individual, we don't know which 1 or 2 or all 3 of those interplaying may be manipulated and may be resulting in the outcome we see, whether that outcome be good or bad. And we know that outcomes can be both. So I went hard in the paint on the kinetic manipulation of kinetic metrics not so long ago, up till recently, in that we know changing alignment, repositioning the skeleton, the before and after image, the kinematic effects. We know that they are person specific, unpredictable, sometimes unexpected, and sometimes unexplainable, and they don't seem to be what need to happen for symptoms to change either. I think we will agree that that's the case. So then we look at kinetic changes and go, okay, well, they're still a bit person specific and unpredictable, but it makes sense that these devices might be working by reducing load on a structure, reducing tensile load, compressive load, rather than changing position. So I definitely went hard in the paint on these things are manipulating kinetic metrics. So I would for many years refer to them as load modifiers. So if people said to me, I've got an arch support. No, it's not an arch support. It's a load. Yeah, it's a load modifier. More recently, and I'm not saying that's probably still the way I describe them to patients. Like, think of this as, because I think if you tell someone they're in a bad posture and this is going to improve their posture, you've completely set them up to think they need this forever. Whereas if you tell them, look, this is a load modifier, and if we get the design of it right, we can reduce the load on the bit of you that's sore, and then when it's less sore and we've built up its own capacity and tolerance, we can take this guy away and you can, live life happily ever after. So I would probably still use that description with patients, but it does feel like as calling them a load modifier. I've just said, mechanical, neuromotor, psychological, or something I don't yet understand. Well, load modifier only really covers one of those four, right? And so I feel like I'm already overcommitting to saying I know that I understand these things better than I am. So although I might describe that to my patients, I don't know that I'm super comfortable referring to them as load modifiers in a room of colleagues or in a conference anymore. I don't know. I've got nothing better to call them, by the way, because even if we call them symptom modifier, we're getting into the realms here of just having such a wide umbrella that just says, oh, this is a symptom modifier. It doesn't tell us anything about the mechanism.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say, waffling on to your answer, is I don't know how they work. I know they work for some of the people some of the time. I know they don't work for all of the people all of the time. I know that even after prescribing them for 21 years now, I still have poor outcomes with them. I'd like to think that I have fewer poor outcomes now than I did, but I never go into this with patients. I never oversell what I think is going to happen with patients. I always say, look, like, I could have 10, I'm going to pharmacy analogy incoming. I could have 10 people in front of me with a headache, and I give them all the exact same dose of the exact same drug. I don't get 10 identical responses. And it's exactly the same with these devices. So, I mean, I know you've probably heard my drug analogy for orthoses before, Blake. If you've,
I use it every day, every single day.
It's not perfect, but it gets across, I think, what we're trying to say, which is, like we say, antibiotics are for a week. Antibiotics are short term, but aspirin after a stroke is long term. Some orthoses are short term, some might be long term. Here's a drug, and we give it to you at too low a dose, and it doesn't do anything. We give it to too high a dose, and there are unnecessary, inappropriate side effects. We've got to get that therapeutic window, that dose just right. Here's an orthosis. If we give it to you and you say it's comfy, but it's not helping, maybe it's too low a dose. We'll dial up the dose. If we give it to you and it makes something else hurt, it's too high a dose. We'll titrate accordingly. I'm just open, honest, transparent with patients and say, look, like, I don't prescribe these things very often, way more infrequently than people assume. But when I do, I'm pretty honest about, like, this is why I'm giving it to you. I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't think it would help, but I need you to know that it's still, even though I think it might help, it still might not help.
Yeah.
Which is a tough sell sometimes, because we're scientists. We're happy with that grey. We're happy with being uncertain, or at least we should be. But we can't assume or expect our patients or our athletes to be as happy with uncertainty as we are.
Especially when they're in pain as well.
Yeah.
What do you still use, like, your, I guess, umbrella concept thinking about orthoses prescription? I mean, do you use much of, the neutral calcaneal resting position versus the pronated and bringing them back? Or is it more, tissue stress theory where someone has a perineal issue, so you're going to wedge them laterally rather than looking what their rear foot's doing and trying to put them back to neutral? How do you find kind of that, those concepts, and how do you use both of them, or if you use both of them clinically?
Yeah, I think I probably subscribe more to the latter. So, if I'm giving this thing to make something that's sore less sore, if you basically if you identify what tissue's sore and you identify what job it has, what sort of internal job it's trying to do, and then you provide that job externally, then all other things being equal, you should hopefully offload it. So generally speaking, a valgus posting should offload the perineum. Varus posting should offload tib post, FHL. Heel raises should offload Achilles. We know it doesn't always work like that, but generally speaking, that's probably more where my thought processes are, rather than looking at foot posture. And what I generally tend to do is decide, okay, what do I think I need to deliver externally to, I always think about what I want to achieve and work backwards. So, what do I want to achieve? Okay, I want to offload the target tissue. How do I think I need, what forces do I need to apply to the foot to offload the target tissue? Okay, going back one more step, what do I need this device to look like to apply those forces? Going back one more step from there, how do I cast this foot? Now I know what I think the device needs to look like. How do I cast the foot to make the device look like that? Because ultimately the way you cast the foot dictates the shape of the device. So rather than kind of looking at the foot, casting it, and then deciding what prescription to write, just work backwards. What do I want to achieve? what forces do I need to apply to achieve it? What does this thing need? What shape does it need to be, or design does it need to be to apply those forces? Go back one step. How do I achieve that shape? And at this point, if we know there's a prefab, if we've got a good understanding of the prefab range available, you may get to a certain point where you go, what do I think this device needs to look like? Oh, actually, I know a prefab that looks almost identical to that. Great. Discussion over. Prefab goes in, because your foot, your target tissue does not care whether it's custom or prefab, does not know nor care how much it costs. If it's the right design to deliver what we think needs to be delivered to have a therapeutic effect, then, this is why I always say, people say, what prefab do you use? I suggest that people just want to have a favorite and stock it in the clinic. Like, have a really good understanding of the prefab market, how it varies, the ones that have got various posts, the ones that are high in the midfoot, the ones that are pitched in the sagittal plane, and then basically at some point go, oh, this would do well with X or Y or Z. Like, just the same way that when you take a mold for a custom device, you don't always write the same prescription. You write the prescription based on what you think you need. Well, why would you only give one prefab? So yeah, I tend to work backwards, probably applying what would be traditionally referred to as more of a tissue stress approach.
Yeah, I like it. It's good.
Yeah.
Do you, talking on the topic of kind of bunions, toe deformity and foot posture, do you think that these things are caused by shoes? And what do you think is the role of kind of minimalist shoes in the general population? And to pre-frame this is a very polarizing question, as you can see on social media. And as podiatrists, I feel like we get it quite a lot. And I do think that there's information from both worlds that are beneficial for us and for patients. But yeah, what do you think about the whole, minimalist shoes and being barefoot and shoes causing foot pain and bunions and things like that?
Yeah, it is polarizing. And like anything, there's like any debate, there's a false dichotomy, i.e. there's people, camping out at each extreme of this polarized debate. The people that say shoes are evil and Nike is the devil and you should only be in, barefoot shoes. And then at the other extreme saying this is absolutely ridiculous, and the reality is I don't know that the truth is ever going to be at these extremes. And I think it is a false dichotomy. I don't think it's unreasonable to adopt philosophies that say that shoes apply external forces to feet. If we just go back to, just take all of the kind of Instagram debates out of it, and we just go back to high school physics. If you apply a force to a structure, there will be consequences. Now, what those consequences are, will depend on the magnitude of the force, the location of the force application, and the time of delivery. So, this is why you see a rock that's had water dripping on it for 4 years, and over time, like just water has put a dent in granite. Like, continuous force on structures probably changes structures, right? So I don't think it's unreasonable. And this is it. You look at people saying shoes are evil, you need to be more barefoot. Some of the stuff they say is completely reasonable. They've just gone a bit too far. They've just gone a bit too extreme. And they're normally selling, when someone's that extreme and promises to have all the answers, we always say follow the money.
There's a 12-week course on the end of that.
Correct. There's something, right? There's a 12-week course, or there's a shoe, or both. But, if someone's got a really strong opinion, they seem to have all the answers on a topic that doesn't feel that we should have all the answers, follow the money. But that said, as a father of 2 boys who are now 7 and 9, for the first couple of years of their life, I kept them as barefoot as I could. When they first, started going to school and they were in shoes, they were in Nike Frees, a shoe that was very flexible, very flat, very wide. I still keep them in shoes that are, because 7 and 9, they don't have adult, their foot is not fully, they don't have a full skeleton yet. It's still vast portion of it is still cartilaginous. So they're like little bags of jelly, these feet. So they are more prone to external force application being problematic. So, I can't sort of sit here and say the barefoot tribe speak nonsense when they don't generally, and when these things, I've applied these principles to my own children. That said, we know there are people that have lived barefoot their entire lives, Maasai tribes in Kenya, women who are in their 30s who've never had a shoe on their foot in 30 years, who have hallux valgus deformities. Like, we know this. Like, this is known. So we can't just say that bunions are caused by shoes. Bunions, and this is not my wheelhouse, and I'm no expert, but a very good friend of mine, and who is my mentor, Dr. Simon Spooner, did his PhD in HAV and the predilection for HAV. And every time you talk to him about this, and every time he posts on it, he gives you an equation, which is, and if I remember, it's P equals G plus E plus G times E, where P is your phenotype, G is your genotype, and E is your environment. So your phenotype is the physical expression of your genetic code. Your genotype is your genetic code, and E, your environment is where you live, environment around your foot as well. What we're talking about here is it's called gene-environment interaction. It's a whole branch of epigenetics, and if you look at gene-environment interaction, and again, I'm not smart enough. Wikipedia will probably do a better job of explaining it to you than I am, but essentially it says, if you give the same thing to different people, they don't all end up the same. It's just not the way life works. So I think when you look at someone who says, I wore shoes and it gave me hammer toes, I wore shoes, it gave me bunions, those are very real, very valid experiences that we should not illegitimize. But let's not pretend that everyone that wears the same shoe is going to get hammer toes or bunions. It's the answer is probably somewhere within the complexity of gene environment interaction. Minimalist shoes, I think your second part of the question was, what role do minimalist shoes in our life? In children's lives, I think they should be priority. I think I've said I love to run in what would be considered the opposite of a minimalist shoe. But then today, when we went to fireworks evening just earlier, I was wearing a pair of Converse. Arguably not minimalist, but very flat, not particularly cushioned.
How can you wear that? Your body just must be bone on bone.
I know, absolutely. So, I think variation is a good thing. We know this variation in training, variation in footwear. So yeah, I don't run in anything that would be close to being defined as a minimalist shoe, but I look at some of the shoes I wear a lot of the time. Converse, I wear a pair of like Oxfords or Brogues at work, very hard, very flat. Too pointy for some people on Instagram, I know, but no bunions yet, touch wood. And then in the summer, I'm in flip-flops or thongs, as you call them. 3 months, 4 months, if we're lucky. We don't get great summers here, as you know, but yeah, I think variation is key. I don't believe we should demonize any extreme, really.
Yeah.
Just picking your brain a little bit further, Ian, on like more minimalist shoes for kids. Is that something that you typically recommend to patients that you see? And like, to the best of your knowledge, is there any literature supporting that?
To children. So I'm out of the podiatric game now. I always defer. I'll be honest. Even queries about my own children, I get straight on the phone to Kylie Williams, she's my guru, and she's most of our gurus, I know. So I don't see children in clinic. It is something that sometimes, it's the way I treated my own kid. It's the way I the strategy I adopted for footwear with my own children. If I'm talking to friends and we're at a barbecue or something and they want to have a chat about it, I'll preface it by saying, look, I see adults now, and kids aren't mini adults, so I'm a bit out of date with the literature, I have to say. But generally speaking, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, I'm sure if I am, someone who's listening, maybe even Kylie herself, will call me on it quite rightly. But I think a shoe that's wide, a shoe that's flexible, is probably the play. And anytime they can be not in shoes, when it's safe to not be in shoes environmentally, that's got to be good as well, because we want them feeling kitchen tiles, we want them feeling grass and sand, we want we need load for bones to develop. That's why they have treadmills in space for the astronauts, and they still come back osteoporotic. We want those intrinsic muscles. I do remember working in a pediatric clinic 2005-ish, 2006. I'm going back a bit, and someone will, and most of my experience. Do you guys work with peds still?
Yeah. I work quite a bit. The last couple of years, I work quite a bit with peds.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same still, but certainly my experience in a pediatric clinic within the National Health Service here in the UK in 2005, 2006 was that 80% of my day was reassuring worried parents. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, by the way. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It was I'm quite happy to do it. But I remember one person coming in with their child who was like 10 months, hadn't started walking yet, and they were worried about their fifth toe being a bit curly. But they hadn't started walking yet. So you think about, I said, look, well, you think about the things that often, promote good toe alignment. And it's the skeleton, which probably, this is a bag of jelly, this foot, and it's the intrinsic muscles. Well, they're not working yet because they haven't taken in their first step. So, and you just sort of think to yourself, like getting down on your feet, loading your feet, experiencing what different materials, and sensations feel like under your feet. It's such a sensory, not organ, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean? I think being barefoot as much as possible when it's safe to be, and then when you are in shoes, they need to be, as flexible and wide as possible. But just that, say kids aren't mini adults aren't big kids. So I don't know, you look at some Instagram accounts that say that that's the way adults should be. I think what's true of kids doesn't necessarily have to apply to adults.
Yeah, good answer.
I was surprised to hear that you didn't say that your two boys, you haven't got them a pair of Vaporflies yet. And they're not wearing them to school. But they're cross country.
It's funny, my youngest, who's 7, is super quick for his age. He's absolutely the fastest in his class at sports day, but by some distance. He's just crazy quick. Don't know where he gets it from. It's certainly not me. But every now and then he says, let's have a race, and I'm not the dad that lets my kids win. That's not the way I roll. I know the time will come where they'll beat me at everything, so I'm just going to hang on to these victories that I have for as long as I can. And I also want him to know that when he does beat me, like, you've really beaten me today, if we're ever out going for a walk on Sunday, while the roast dinner's in the oven, do we have a race, Daddy? Yeah, let's do this. And I will smoke him without fail. And I am not embarrassed to do it. And my wife's like, at least make it a bit. I was like, no, like I need to go balls out here to see how much I beat him by. And then over the years, how much I beat him by is going to get smaller. Now, I'm not saying I'm wearing Vaporflies for these little races with my kid, but there'll come a time where I'm probably going to have to reach for them.
You just kind of hope that over time, like shoe technology just slowly gets better and better as he gets quicker. So you've always got that bit of buffer zone. So it's like,
I don't think I've got too long left. And this is him literally running in Converse. So I'm worried for the future, and I'm worried when he decides that he wants. When at some point his feet get as big as mine, and he goes into my study and he looks at a wall of shoes, and he's like, oh, I remember using my dad's aftershave, or wearing your dad's, borrowing your dad's stuff when you got old enough, and he's got a whole load of shoes that he's got access to. So it's going to be a fun time.
That's good. All right, we'll whiz through these questions because we don't want to keep you too late. I did want to ask a couple of questions that are really important, I think, because we know definitely a lot of podiatrists who listen to this podcast, and as a podiatrist myself, and someone like yourself having so much experience, where do you think we need improvement? And for students and younger grads listening, how can they become proficient? I guess how can they become a really good, well-rounded clinician, and where can they go and where can they look?
Yeah, good question. Again, apologies in advance for this potentially being a really UK biased answer. So, it's the only sort of lens I can view this through, but because you guys may well be doing this stuff already, but I look at a lot of new grads here and people with only a couple of years experience, and it seems to be that their focus is on how do I get better at treating X or treating Y, or how do I get better at treating heel pain, because I see a lot of heel pain, or how do I get better at treating footballers, because football boots are a challenge to work with when you're not experienced with them. And what I don't see much of is people saying, how do I be a better communicator? Like, how do I get better interacting with other humans? And I truly believe time spent on communication skills, motivational interviewing or health coaching, or those soft skills really, that we're going to use with every patient every day from the minute they walk in the door. We talk about what does a good history look like, and most students will be like, oh, have you got a pro forma of the questions you ask? But what they're not saying is, what they're not looking at a history taking as is like, how much should we be listening versus talking? And we all know we talk more than we should, and we don't listen as long as we should. How do we really tease out the patient's values and what's meaningful to them? That should be front and center of every consultation, and I don't think it always is. People come in with, and first thing you say to them is, okay, tell me what hurts, rather than say, tell me your story. They're two really different questions that open up completely different discussions. And we also project our own beliefs on patients, where tell me what hurts. Well, my knee hurts. Okay, what a good outcome for them looks like is their knee not hurting. But that may not be the case. You know, a better question being, tell me what perfect looks like to you, you know, and that may be something completely different. So I think, you know, better understanding of people, psychology, within that, better understanding of pain science. I know I'm preaching to converted here because I've listened to you guys talk about this at length. And probably the one thing I see young clinicians not being comfortable with is doing nothing. So what I mean by that is they always feel they have to tangibly do something for the patient. You know, I've had consultations where patients have come in and we've fairly quickly drawn out from them what's really important to them, what they want to achieve. And perhaps all they've come in with is the huge concern that they have a stress fracture. And the main thing they've brought with them is, I'm worried I have a stress fracture and I've got a race coming up. And it may well be that all you need to do is spend time, you know, listening to them, you know, assessing them, taking history, and then at the end of the consultation saying, I'm reasonably confident you do not have a stress fracture. You don't have night pain. You know, you don't have pain on percussion. Your single leg hop is pain free. And they say, can I run this weekend? I've got, you know, a 10K race. I've been training for it. Can I run? And you're like, yeah, I give you, you know, I reassure you don't have a stress fracture. And they leave. You haven't done anything, or have you? You've talked to them, you've listened to them, you've provided reassurance. But I know so many people that would feel like, I need to do something. Like, what do I need to do? And all of a sudden, the patient comes in, I'm worried I've got a stress fracture. You know, the classic, they come in with one problem, they leave with 5 problems. You know, they come in with, I think I've got a stress fracture. They leave with a leg length difference, a rear foot varus, you know, all of this terminology that sounds terrifying. I think young people just need to be good, you know, really, really focus on understanding humans, understand human behavior, get good at communication, understand pain science. And, you know, a couple of hours or a couple of days, some time and some energy investing in those skills rather than investing in a laser machine or to use but one thing that's super popular in the UK at the moment, it would just make you such a better clinician.
Yeah, that's good.
Beautiful. All right, last question. And I was just looking at our listener questions, which are around HAV and patients, which you've definitely, I'm going to have to steal far out. Half of my consults these days are going to be analogies I've stolen from you, like the GM moment interaction. So some of the questions you've definitely answered, and we'll pre-frame that at the start. But what I wanted to, and I definitely know this is a hot topic for podiatrists, but what do you believe, when we talk about foot type and biomechanics, what do you believe in, say, when people talk about them being the cause of an injury, in the sense of one foot rolls in more than the other, or this is why you got the injury, or you've got this limb length difference, this is why you've got this injury? Because we know there's a lot more nuance to it than that. But how would you frame that for a lot of podiatrists listening who think that way or talk and discuss with their patients that way?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because we immediately assume we understand risk factors for injury better than we do. If someone comes in with pain and you identify this is what's caused it, there's so many potential flaws in that thinking. But even if we go back a step, we have to be in a position where we have good, robust evidence that says these things are risk factors for injury, biomechanical risk factors. And I don't know that we do. In fact, well, I do know that we don't, I should say. So, you know, when we look at sort of what things are not reliably, but what things do we think are greater risk factors for injury? When we look at the things that most of the totality of the evidence tends to point towards, it's things like body mass index, previous injury. I think, you know, there's a systematic review done on running injury risk factors almost every year now, and the same stuff kind of gets found out. You know, BMI, previous injury, not just running injury, previous injury of any kind. But then when you look at the biomechanical risk factors, it all gets a bit, I don't know, you know, you're like, it's a bit more hazy. So I don't know that we have robust science to build opinions on in the first place. That's the first thing to say. The next thing is, if someone comes in, we would say, if someone comes in pain with a pronated foot, it doesn't mean they're in pain because of the pronated foot. Like what you're seeing is someone who's already in pain, and the way they're built, you know, the physical, their phenotype, the physical expression of their genetic code. So, you know, someone comes in and they say, I'm in pain. It's factually accurate, correct statement. You say to them, you have pronated feet, also factually accurate. But again, like that, now suddenly linking those two, whoa, can we jump straight there? You know, is it appropriate to do that? If I walk in and I say, look, my knee hurts, someone says, you have anterior knee pain. Yes, I do. You are a bald man. Yes, I am. like both factually correct statements about me. What madness it would be to link those two, right? What you're doing is you're taking one of my physical characteristics and you're linking it to the pain I've come into your clinic with. Like, I feel like someone comes in and you say, oh, this hurts. Oh, it's because of your leg length. Might be right, but are we just linking two things that coexist in one human? I get really, really wary of people that say we're going to get to the root cause of the problem. That's the buzzword, isn't it? Like, come and see me in my clinic because I've got this bit of kit and we're going to get to the root cause of the problem. And you're like, oh, are we? In runners, the root cause of the problem might be that they trained a bit like a dickhead. I don't need a bit of fancy kit. Like, let's just have a look at your Strava. Let's listen to you talk for 10 minutes and be like, I think I see what's happened here. So yeah, what about my leg length? Like, yeah, okay, like I'm not too worried about that. The same way I'm not too worried about what lovely hair Blake has and what absent hair I have. So at the same time, I'm wary that even as I say this, it makes it sound like I don't think that these biomechanical characteristics could ever be associated with pain. And I don't think that's true either. I think what I'm trying to highlight here is just how murky it all is and how quick we are to jump to biomechanical causes. And I don't know that I'm comfortable doing that so quickly. I think this is what you can tease out in the history. If someone comes into me and they say, let's take this scenario, if someone coming in and saying, I've always, I've been running for 10 years. But that said, I've always wanted to do a half marathon, but I've never got there because every single time my weekly volume goes above X or my weekly frequency or intensity goes above Y, I get tib post pain every single time. And you've got a 10-year history here of someone having I'm doing strength work, I'm sleeping well, I'm eating well, I'm trying to do all the things that I know are smart, but I just can't get above this ceiling. Every time I get to a certain point, tib post phase. And I look at them and, by any definition, they have a pronated foot posture index plus 12, whatever you want to call it. That's really different to someone coming in and saying, I've been running for 10 years. I clock 50, 60K a week without fail. I've been super lucky with injury. I've not been injured for 9.5 years. I've been running PBs over every distance. But 6 months ago, I finally decided to have a crack at the marathon, up my volume, up my frequency, up my intensity, and now I've got tib post pain. I look at their feet and they've got exactly the same foot, pronated foot posture index plus 12. Both of these people have tib post pain. Both have a pronated plus 12 FPI index score. But they're two really different people, aren't they? One of whom has clearly just overloaded tib post with training. And I don't know that it's fair to say their foot posture has anything necessarily to do with that, because for 9.5 years, they were golden. The other one, who can never get above a certain ceiling, maybe, we still can't be certain, but I'm a bit more confident in perhaps saying your feet and the way they behave and the way they interact with the environment might be placing this particular tissue under a bit of high demand. Should we see if helping them out allows you to push above that threshold? So again, it depends. It's contextual. But yeah. I mean, I think, you blend, as always, your knowledge of the area, you accept what you don't know, you blend that with clinical reasoning and experience, and then you apply that to the individual in front of you.
Yeah,
Great answer.
We always say, our job would be so much easier if we were a clinician who did just say that, yes, your pain is because of your leg length discrepancy. It'd be so much easier, but we tend to go down that moral track of being better clinicians.
I know, those bloody ethics, they always get in my way as well. It's annoying, isn't it?
You touched on that before as well, like they can come in with one problem and leave with 5, especially if you're talking about biomechanics, because those things you can't change either. And if they're leaving going, I've got flat feet, a limb length difference, and a knee valgus, I'm never going to be able to do anything.
Yeah. You've sent a runner back out into the world, more fragile, more hypervigilant. You've done them a disservice as a patient, as a fellow human.
Yeah.
Lovely, mate. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll end it there because I know we'll be just keep talking for hours and hours. Now, for people to find you and I guess see the content and things that you're up to, what's the best way to follow you? Do you just want to give people your number on here and they can just call you at any time?
Yeah. I must confess, I'm on a bit of a social media, not a social media break, but I've not been as active on there of late. So Instagram is probably where I hang the most. Twitter, much less so. Just Twitter's just got too toxic for me in every way and shape and form. So yeah, Instagram, I'm at what is my handle? Sports Podiatry Info, I think. Instagram is at Sports Podiatry Info. Twitter is at sports_pod. But if you put Ian Griffiths Sports Podiatrist into Google, you'll find my website, and then off the back of that, there's Facebook. Again, I don't post on Facebook at all anymore. I barely go on Twitter. Normally, I'm just on Twitter, posting GIFs. Instagram, I every now and then do a few things on my stories. I need to get back into the infographics. They've dropped off. I've just been too busy.
So what are you up to at the moment? You're obviously clinically, but you're doing some research and you're doing some stuff with Monash University. Is that right?
Yeah, I just started actually. So yeah, I'm in clinic 2.5 days a week. I teach. I've got a teaching post for 1 day a week at Queen Mary, University of London. So I teach on the sports and exercise medicine master's degree there. So that keeps me occupied. We've and got a couple of students that I've just inherited, and we're overseeing their MSc projects over the next year. So we're going to do some cool qualitative stuff with regards to foot orthoses, because I don't think there's enough of that out there.
Are you doing the color study? That was one of the questions as well.
Oh, was it? So yeah, no, not with these students. That will come in time for sure. Dr. Simon Spooner, who I mentioned earlier, who did his PhD in hallux valgus, and he's a really good friend of mine, really good mentor, one of the smartest people I know by a mile. At the start of lockdown 2020, we decided we were going to just do a survey of what people's beliefs were about the colour of their orthoses. Because as we know, we spend so much time caring and thinking about what material should the shell be? Should it be polypropylene? Should it be carbon fibre? Should it be EVA? What shape should it be? So we think about its material, we think about its geometry and its stiffness, and i.e. its thickness. We think about our modifications, our heel raises, our forefoot additions, and then we just go, whatever top cover the lab have got. And that top cover is the only thing the patient sees, right? It's the only thing they look at when it's down in their shoe. And once again, let's not pretend we're not influenced by colour. Everywhere around us there is colour. It influences our thoughts, our behaviors, and our cognition. Marketing knows this, and it uses it to its own benefit. Nature knows this. Road signs, we know when we're being warned of something. We know what bugs are poisonous, so I don't think it's unreasonable. Maybe it is, but here's the thing: we don't know, so let's ask the question, right? But I don't think it's unreasonable to say that the colour of these things might be something to consider. It might not, but I think it's worth asking the question. So we did a survey where we asked podiatrists and patients a couple of questions. It was because it was online, because it was lockdown. So we asked podiatrists, do you consider colour when you prescribe orthoses? Just good old fashioned yes or no. We asked them, what's the most common colour you prescribe? We asked them a couple of other kind of colour related questions, and we got over 800 podiatrists reply to this survey, which in the world of research is a big number. Which and then we were going to do it. It's qualitative work. So we can do a thematic analysis and see what themes emerged. When we asked patients, we said to them, were you offered to choose the colour of your own devices? Do you think it's important? And a couple of what colour would you choose? And then we asked them, if you had to describe your pain as a colour, what colour would you describe pain as? And that isn't particularly groundbreaking. There's research that's done this before, and it's said that people tend to describe inflammatory type problems as, unsurprisingly, red and orange. People describe arthritic pain as black or grey, and there's a couple of other bits and pieces as well. And people say, well, that's the ramblings of a hippie. But let's be clear: pain is a complex, personal, multifaceted, emergent experience that we ask people to give a number between 0 and 10. Like if you're going to attach a number to it, an arbitrary number, why not ask them to attach a color? I don't think it's that different, right? It's just that people aren't used to it, so they're uncomfortable because it's new to them. And then we wanted to see if these kind of patient and clinician beliefs married up, and our thought process. And we've published a paper on it, but we didn't. So we were going to publish a paper on it. And then when we went to sort of submit it to various journals, they said, does it have ethical approval? Now, again, my understanding was you didn't need ethical approval for a survey that was done online, because ethics is about making sure people are safe. You're not putting them at risk. There were no people involved. There was no interaction. There was no privacy issues because it was completely anonymous. We weren't asking them personal questions. We weren't asking them questions about gender or anything that could be considered uncomfortable. So I just didn't think ethics applied. I was wrong. So we can't get ethics retrospectively. So we now have this work that just can't, that no one will publish. And my concern now is, yeah, we could get ethics now and we could run it again. But if we run it again, we've already primed people. Yeah. The problem is that was really raw data at the time. And I just don't think we'd get the same kind of responses. And my thought process was, someone comes in and says, I describe my pain as black. And you look over here at the clinicians and they say, 80% of them saying the color I give most often is black, because the patients don't want to see it in their shoe. Like, you're giving them something that's the color of their pain. I don't feel like that's the play. We also know that, if someone has a really strong affiliation to a football club, then that football club has a rival. You might not want to make the color. If we're talking elite sports here, for example, I'll use football because I don't have enough AFL knowledge anymore. I did once upon a time, but it's got a bit off. But say you saw a Manchester United player, you wouldn't give them an insole that was sky blue because that's the color of Manchester City. So like that would just make sense. So I just feel like color is worthy of more consideration when we're writing these prescriptions than it's getting, but I can't prove it yet. So it's work that we've done. It's work that will sit on our desk for eternity, and it's work that at some point we need to work out where we go with it and how we do it. But that's where I'm at with color. So sorry, I went off on a tangent. You can see this is where I'm currently.
No, it's good, because I did want to ask, after I'd never thought of it ever in my whole life, and when I very first started as a new graduate, it was just get black, they get a second pair, get blue, so they can tell the difference. And I never thought anything about it until I saw you post about it. And now I do try to consider, or even just ask them what color they think would be best. I don't know, they like it more, they'll wear it more, I don't know, something like that. But it's just good to raise the question, it seems.
It's good to talk about, isn't it? And it may be nonsense, but here's the thing, like the color green is associated with health and vitality. You look at the color of the pharmacy side. Is that pharmacy again? I'm going to keep crowbarring it back in. Yeah. You look at you think of the color black and people associate it with the plague or death or decay. You think of a skull and crossbones on a pirate ship. Imagine you check. I say this in presentations I give. You check into a hotel. You suddenly, cut your foot open in the shower. You run down to reception, say, "Can I get the first aid box?" And they hand you a black box with a black cross on it. That's completely different. A real different vibe than a green box with a green cross on it. So let's not pretend that color isn't important in our lives. I just don't know how important or if it's important in orthoses, but I don't think we're in a position where we can write it off. So it's you can tell you've tapped into the area I'm passionate about here. But the students I'm currently overseeing, because the original question here was what you're up to, so I apologize, I've gone off on one. But yeah, we're overseeing. I've got a couple of three students, and we're overseeing their master's projects. I teach on the master's degree. I'm in clinic 2.5 days a week. And then I'm trying to juggle being a good parent / father, husband, and trying to log about 50, 60, 70K a week running. So that's why I'm not sitting down and doing too many Instagram graphics at the moment, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but you'll be back. A mighty return, and then you'll be in everyone's Instagram comments, just in these big long-winded replies that take hours and hours. That's what you love to do late at night, I'm sure.
There was a time when I did spend many an hour in the comments of various social media platforms, picking fights. It's fun, right? And I was younger and I had more time and I had more energy. I'm just a grumpy old man that shouts at clouds now, but that's why we need young people like you guys coming along, going, pass the baton. You've got the energy. Pick the fights. Get out there and get stuck in. Yeah.
And I've just been like, I'll do a big long-winded comment, call them out, and say, if you've got any issues, and I just put your email and say, please forward all the issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. All right, mate. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.